We start off with a set induction, a way of getting our heads around what we're trying to do now. The first thing we do is we recognize the place we're in. We say, "How goodly are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling place, O Israel. Through your abundant love, we enter your house." And we bow down in awe at your holy ark. And we enjoy the space that we're in as a special space. And we get our minds around this idea that we are not coming to another hall, but we're coming to a place which can be a sacred place. It becomes sacred because we make it sacred. And we start off our tefillot by doing that. For those of you who wear a talit, we put the talit on now. The talit is a four-cornered garment which all people in the ancient world used to wear. They used to wear this because it's a much easier way of weaving a four-cornered garment than it was to have tailored shirts and tailored clothing. But what they did was they told you to put tzitzit on the end of your garment. But you're only allowed to have tzitzit if you're a free man or free woman. If you weren't a free person, if you were a slave, you weren't allowed to have fringes on your garments. So when we put on talit, we're putting on a free man's garment. And we remind ourselves that we are free. We are free. And particularly the colors we put on our fringes are to remind us of heaven and earth. That's why we have the blue and the white. We remind ourselves of heaven and earth, also the colors of Israel, and we wrap ourselves around with the talit and we say, Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu chei ha'olamim, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, lehitatef b'tzitzit. We now turn to page 194. We're going to be doing the Birkot HaShacharit, the blessings of the morning. And before we begin these blessings, just a quick word about blessings. Most of our lives we live on autopilot. We get through our day, we don't notice things. We eat food, we don't notice it. We do all manner of things without noticing them. We're on autopilot. But there is a better and a happier way to live life. That's by raising your awareness of all the things around you. And there are lots of brachot. In fact, the rabbis say to us, in the Talmud, they say you're supposed to say 100 blessings a day. Now, I don't know about 100, but it means finding 100 things every single day that you find fascinating, or that you focus on, and then raise your awareness of what's happening in the world. Or you can, of course, just live your life like most people live them, completely oblivious of the beauty of the world, the amazing factors in the world, amazing ideas in the world, amazing things in the world. And we say brachot to raise our consciousness of what's going on around us. The first bracha, as opposed to worrying about God's amazing world, we worry about our amazing bodies. And we say on the beginning of page 194, please, the first bracha we say is a bracha that we say about our bodies. And by the way, so you don't say this once a day and forget what an amazing thing you're walking around in. Anytime you go to the bathroom, you would say this bracha when you come out. It's to remind you of how your body is really a fascinating thing. And we mustn't take it for granted. We must really be aware of how amazing it truly is. Let's say this together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher yatzar et ha'adam b'chokhmah, uvara vo nekavim, chalulim, galui ve'adua lifnei chisei chvodecha, שאם יפתח אחד מהם, או יסתם אחד מהם, אי אפשר להתקיים ולעמוד לפניך. ברוך אתה, אדוני, רופא כל בשר ומפליא לעשות. We are aware of this amazing body we have. We bless you because of this. With divine wisdom you made our bodies, combining veins and arteries and vital organs into a finely balanced network. Wondrous make and sustain of life. Were one of them to fail, how well we are aware we would lack the strength to stand before you. We now turn to the second of the morning brachot, which is a bracha to remind us that we breathe. The word neshama in Hebrew means a soul, neshima is a breath. And this sort of combines the two. You'll notice that half of this particular meditation focuses on breathing and has only plosive. Every word is plosive, like breathing out. We'll read this together on page 196, please. And let's do it very slowly so we can incorporate our breathing into this. And focus on your breathing as you're reading these words, if you're reading them in transliteration or in the Hebrew. Elohai, neshama, shenatata, bi, tohora, hi, ata, varata, ata, yatzarta, ata, nefachta, bi, v'ata, meshamra, bekirbi. For as long as my soul is within me, I offer thanks to you, eternal my God and God of my ancestors, source of all creation, sovereign of all souls. Baruch atah Adonai, asher biyado nefesh kol chai, v'ruach kol basar ish. The next section is called the Birkot HaShachar, which are consciousness raisers for the day. As we go through this, I'm going to give you the hint of what the thoughts are, and I'd like you to read to yourselves in either the Hebrew and English. One by one, I'll give you the thought that comes with the first one. The first thought that we have is we are able to hear. We're able to hear those birds early in the morning. They'd wake us up sometimes, but at least they're there early in the morning. We focus on the fact that we can hear. That's the first bracha. The second bracha is we recognize that we are able to see. We can see. We can see things in front of us. The world would be completely different if we were blind. What the world would be like, what the world must be like for a blind person. We focus our attention on that right here, that we are people who are able to see. Please recite the bracha. The next bracha talks about freedom. None of us are slaves, but we're slaves to all sorts of other things. We're slaves to our littleness, we're slaves to our habits, we're slaves to the mild addictions we have, and we don't have to be, because we are made free. Let's say the next bracha. We've woken and we're standing up straight. And standing up straight we do it physically, we've just woken up, we can now stand up straight. But there's more than that. We can live lives like people who are straight up and down. We can be people who are straight, not only physically, we can be straight emotionally and morally as well. We say this bracha. Top of page 200. The next bracha is quite enigmatic, and I've had a lot of difficulty trying to work out what this was really about. Till I was told a very simple explanation of this. All we're doing here is we're saying, God, we recognize that you made heaven and earth. Top of page 200. The next bracha, we focus on a factor that we often forget is so interesting and so important. The fact that we can walk. We've had people in this community who are unable to walk. And you can see the difference between your life and somebody who was in a wheelchair or in crutches and couldn't walk. And we're walking around. Some of us use walking as our exercise. Some of us use walking for getting around. But we can walk. There's also a second part of this bracha which is interesting. Because it says, you direct the steps of man. You direct the steps of man. And we can think at a deeper level, how much of your life you didn't actually direct yourself. Things happened and you were directed by the God force of the universe. We read that bracha now. The next bracha, next to these consciousness raisers, is to be aware of the fact that we have clothes. Now, it might not sound like, like much, but there are many people who today are really, really cold. And we're nicely multi-layered clothing with our warm clothes, and we're in places. We've got clothes, and something that we need to be very aware of, how privileged we are to have warm clothes and even lovely clothes. So we say the bracha over here. The next bracha focuses on the fact that we've woken up. Try and remember how you felt when you went to sleep last night. We're really tired, trying to keep your eyes open perhaps, ready for sleep, and you wake up in the morning and you feel refreshed and you rejuvenate with new energy. We mustn't take that energy for granted. Some people don't have that luxury, and some of us actually wake up in the morning, we feel really good. And that's what we say in this particular bracha. And the last bracha on that page, we thank God for taking sleep out of our eyes and slumber from our eyelids, And I often think when I'm saying this bracha, maybe that I appreciate, but I also appreciate not being mentally sleepy. A lot of people are mentally sleepy. You just don't feel like you're sharp, like you would like to be. We thank God for the fact that our minds as well as our eyes are sharp and clear. Bottom of page 200 for that bracha. The bracha on the top of page 202 is a very strange bracha. It's very strange in that it's very deep, and strange in the sense that it's not something natural that we would be able to relate to quite easily. It's a bracha about the fact that we've got a soul. All living things have got souls at various levels, but human beings have got a soul at a much higher level. We are able to think and see and understand and think deeply about things. We can think about the future. We can imagine the past. We can create new ideas. That's what we recognize when we talk about how we are created. B'tselem Elokim. B'tselem means like a hint of, a token. We are tokens of God. He created. We create little things. He can think in the future. We can think too. We're just like a little smidgen of God in us, and we focus on that capacity on the first bracha on page 202. The next bracha, I've mentioned this idea before, but here it talks about this very, very distinctly. This is a bracha that we are free. It's very important to remind yourself that you are free, because there are two types of people. There are people who live their lives on, I have to. And the other people who live their lives on, I choose to. Now, they might be doing exactly the same things, but those who say, I have to, live a different sort of life than those who say, no, I choose to. I don't have to go to work. I've chosen to go to work. The person who chooses to go to work works differently than somebody who has to. I'm going to visit a sick person because I have to. No, you don't. You're going there because you choose to. And this idea of choosing is the sign of a free man or free woman. We're now on the second bracha on page 202. The three brachot that come after that talk about being part of Israel, and I'd like us all to read this together aloud on page 203. I am a Jew because the faith of Israel demands no abdication of my mind. I'm a Jew because the faith of Israel requires all the devotion of my heart. I'm a Jew because in every place where suffering weeps, the Jew weeps. I'm a Jew because at every time when despair cries out, the Jew hopes. I am a Jew because the word of Israel is the oldest and the newest. I am a Jew because Israel's promise is the universal promise. I am a Jew because for Israel the world is not completed. We are completing it. I am a Jew because for Israel humanity is not created. We are creating it. I am a Jew because Israel places humanity and unity above the nations and above Israel itself. I am a Jew because above humanity, image of the divine unity, Israel places the unity which is divine. Top of the next page is the bracha that we say to work on learning Torah. Learning Torah is not just reading the Bible, it's learning it. What can you learn out of this? We say the bracha, let's say this together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah, to work, engage with the words of Torah. There's a traditional text that we always say, it's found in every siddur. After you've said the bracha about learning, there's one piece that they repeat over and over and over again. Exactly the same bit of learning. And the bit of learning that they have is fascinating. And I think it's worthwhile looking at it again, even though we have looked at this before. I must give credit where credit is due. Rabbi Evan Moffat wrote a book called The Happiness Prayer. The Happiness Prayer. I wouldn't use the word prayer, I would use meditation for exactly the same thing. But what he does is he takes all the things are mentioned in this next bit here, and he says that's the happiness prayer. The fact is that if you lived like this, there is now scientific evidence that happiness can be created. If you live, you will be happy. If you're happy, you're more successful. All these things have been proven. There's a lot of work was done on this coming out of Harvard. And I think it's because so many people went to... Harvard students, a huge number of them are on antidepressants. And my feeling is that if it's there, probably a lot of other places as well, but a lot of people are sad. And this, he said, this is definitely the happiness prayer, and the work that they've done on happiness at Harvard confirms all the stuff we're talking about here. It says, these are obligations without measure, which enhance our world, enhance your life, whilst creating credit in the world to come. Whether you believe there's a world afterwards or don't even know what that possibly mean, I do know that after I die, my children and grandchildren will still be here. And if I live like this, the world that I'll be creating for the future will be a better one. So let's have a look at the things that they tell us. They tell us, first, there are 10 things altogether. And the first one is honoring one's father and mother. Now, some people have mothers or fathers who are very difficult to honor. Parents who are seriously abusive, very difficult to honor. But in their lives, there's always been somebody who was in loco parentis, who acted as if they were a parent to you. And what's really important is to be appreciative of what your parents did for you, or your local parentis did for you, and to recognize what they taught you, how much they put themselves out for you, how many nights they stayed up when you were small and you were sick, what sacrifices they made for your education, the things that they did for you, the kindnesses, daily kindnesses that they did for you. And when you have your own children, you realize how much parents have to do for children, how helpless they are for so long, and how it doesn't seem to stop. And you're constantly looking after your children, irrespective of how old they are. And you think of, am I grateful enough? Am I honoring my parents for what they did for me? That's the first one. The second one is, are you engaging in deeds of compassion? Deeds of compassion. Now, we're not talking about building a home for the aged. We're talking about driving up your road, and there's a lady or man who's old, and they're walking up a steep hill carrying a packet with them. Did you pull up, roll down the window and say, you care to have a ride at the top of the road? Those are acts of compassion. They're easy. They're easy to do. But are you doing enough compassion? Are you doing enough acts of compassion? That's the second one. The third one is, it says, arriving early for study. The Hebrew is, Haskamat Beit HaMidrash Shacharit Arvit. Do you get up early? People get up early when they're enthusiastic. Anything you're enthusiastic about, you get up early. And to ask any runner, he'll tell you how early he gets up in the morning and goes for the run. But when we get up, do you get up early in the morning to learn more about the world? Just to learn stuff, to keep your brain alive and to keep your mind alive. Getting up early in the morning for studying. Morning and evening for studying. Then the next one is, number 4, is dealing graciously with guests. Do you invite guests into your home and deal graciously with them? Do you invite them into your lives and deal graciously with them? The one after that is, do you visit the sick? Do you visit people not necessarily physically sick, but who are in trouble? Are you there for them? And it's a nice idea to do a checklist on this stuff regularly and often. How am I doing on all of these things? And then you remind yourself, as happens to me quite often, oops, you know somebody's been ill. Did you even send them a WhatsApp? Did you find out how they're doing? Are you worried about that? Then it says, providing for the wedding couple. Understand that in the ancient world, the only celebrations people ever had was weddings. But it's celebrating life, it's celebrating those sorts of things. When somebody graduates from university, when somebody finishes matric, when somebody gets a new job, it's a celebration. Do you celebrate with them? Do you feel as happy for them as they probably feel as happy for themselves? Are you doing anything that shows your participation in their joy? Then it says you accompany the dead for burial. Accompanying the dead and being there when people are bereaved is considered the greatest mitzvah. When you bury another human being, you're doing something that is very different to any other kindness you do. If I show kindness to you by giving you a ride up the road, you might be able to give me kindness in other ways. If I invite you into my home and I'm kind to you, you might be able to reciprocate. When you bury the dead, they cannot reciprocate. That makes it a particularly special mitzvah. Then it says, are you devoted in prayer? Now, the Hebrew word for prayer is tefillah, and I don't think that tefillah is a good translation of prayer. So I like to think of it as meditating. I think the Siddur is one big meditation. There are bits and pieces where you are invited to pray, but for the most part it's a meditation. But when you're focusing on the Siddur, are you really focused? Do you say, okay, everything else, I'm just focusing on this now? That activity alone will make you feel very much more calm and raise your happiness levels. And the next one is making peace among people. There are so many people in the world who have to tell you a Skinner story. They have to tell you something somebody did to them which is nasty. And they seem to just be committed to sharing nastiness in the world. You on the other side, are you making peace among people? It's not avoiding speaking badly, it's do you deliberately try to make peace among people? And the last one is, the study of Torah encompasses them all. Torah is not this, it's not the book. When we talk about Torah, they don't mean the book. They mean understanding and growing as a human being and growing in your understanding of the world. And Talmud Torah Kanei Kulam, that's the most important thing. As long as you're growing as a human being, all of these things will come much, much easier. That's why that's the most important one. You might just do a quick look through this here and see which ones you think you have not been very good at and that you actually should start focusing your attention on. Just take a minute just to look through those, and then we'll carry on with the tefillah. We'll conclude this section here with the reading of a psalm on page 211. I think it's absolutely beautiful, and I hope you think so too. 211, let's read it together in English. O God, who may abide in your house? Who may dwell in your holy mountain? Those who are upright, who do justly, who speak the truth within their hearts, who do not slander others or wrong them, or bring shame upon them, who scorn the lawless, and who honor those who revere God, who give their word, and come what may, will not take it back, who do not exploit others, who do not take bribes. Those who live in this way shall never be shaken. We turn now to the page 212, where the actual tefillah itself begins. That was all preamble. Let's read the first part in English on page 212. Let's do that together. Blessed is the one who spoke, and the world came to be. Blessed is the one. Blessed is the one who continually authors creation. Blessed is the one whose word is deed. Blessed is the one who decrees and fulfills. Blessed is the one who is compassionate towards the world. Blessed is the one who is compassionate towards all creatures. Blessed is the one who rewards the reverent. Blessed is the one who exists for all time, ever enduring. Blessed is the one who redeems and saves. Blessed is God's name. בשבחות ובזמירות נגדל לך ונשבח ונפארך ונזכיר שמך ונמליך מלכנו אלוהינו יחיד חי העולמים מלך משובח ומפואר עדי את שמו הגדול ברוך אתה אדוני מלך מהולל בתשבחות. On page 214, the choir will lead us through this psalm.
ולזמר לשמך עליון.
כי שימחתני אדוני בפועלך, במעשה ידיך ראה. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון.
As I mentioned many times, the psalm is called the Psalm for the Sabbath day, and it doesn't mention the word Sabbath in the whole thing. But it does say here, Tov lodot l'Adonai l'zamer l'shimcha elyon. It's good to sing praises to God and to remember his great name, and to give thanks in the morning and the evenings for all the wonderful things that happen to us in our lives, and to deal with the ones that don't. We don't have a chance except on Shabbat to really deal with it. And that's probably why they set this up as the Sabbath psalm. And at times like today, when things are calmer, we're not that busy, we can actually spend some time thinking about higher things, and that's why it's the psalm of the Shabbat. On page 205, we're going to read the most popular psalm in all of Jewish literature, which is 145. It appears at least twice every single day, and some communities even say more than that. We're going to do this responsibly. I'll read one verse, please, if you read the next one together with me. On top of page 215, Ashrei, it's an acrostic, so it starts with each letter of the alphabet, missing out only one, but you need to remember because of that. I'll read first, and please would you continue afterwards. Ashrei yoshvei beitecha, od yehalelucha sela, Ashrei ha'am shekacha lo, Ashrei ha'am she'adonai lahav. Together, Tehillah leDavid, arom mimcha Elohai hamelech, v'avarecha shimcha leolam va'ed. B'chol yom avachecha, v'ala shimcha leolam va'ed. Gadol Adonai u'melal ma'od, v'ligdulato ein cheker. Dor ledor yishabach ma'asecha, u'gvorotecha yagidu. Hadar kavod hodecha, v'divrei niflotecha asicha. Ve'ezuz norotecha yomeru, וגדולתך אספרנה, זכר רב טובך יביעו, וצדקתך ירננו. חנון ורחום אדוני, ערך אפיים ודל חסד. טוב אדוני לכל, ורחמיו על כל מעשיו. יודוך אדוני כל מעשיך, וחסידיך יבורכוך. כבוד מלכותך יאמרו, וגבורתך ידברו. להודיע לבני אדם גבורותיו, וכבוד הדר מלכותו. מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים, ושולטך בכל דור ודור. סומך אדוני לכל הנופלים, וזוקף לכל הכפופים. עיני כל אליך יסברו, ואתה נותן להם את אוכלם בעתו. פותח את ידיך ומשביע לכל חי רצון. צדיק אדוני בכל דרכיו, וחסיד בכל מעשיו. קרוב אדוני לכל קורב, לכל אשר יקראו באמת. רצון יראיו יעשה, ואת שבתם ישמע ויושיעם. שומר אדוני את כל אוהביו, ואת כל הרשעים ישמיד. תהילת אדוני ידבר פיו, ויברך כל בשר שם קודשו ללמד. ואנחנו נברכיה מעתה ועד עולם. Hallelujah. And the choir are going to lead us through Psalm 150.
Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
We turn now to page 222. Ha'el b'tatzumot uzecha, hagadol b'chvod shemecha, hagibor lenetzach, hanora b'noratecha, hamelech hayoshev al kisei ram v'nisa. Let's look at page 223 in the middle of the page. Let's read this together, please, in English. You shall always be praised, great and holy God, our sovereign in heaven and on earth. Songs of praise and psalms of adoration become you, acknowledging your might and your dominion. Yours are strength and sovereignty, sanctity, grandeur, and glory always. We offer our devotion, open our hearts in acclamation. Baruch atah Adonai el melech gadol batishbachot el hahodot Adon niflot habocher b'shirei zimra melech el chei haolamim. If you ever look at this particular last bit over here, you'll see how many names there are for God. There's the word Adonai with the two yuds, which is in Kabbalistic literature refers to God who is, who always was, even if you didn't recognize it, and always will be. The eternity of God. Then it talks about God as being Melech. Melech literally means a king, but it's a ruler. That who's ruling the universe? It says El Haodot, Adon HaNiflot, you're the master of miracles. The master of miracles. And says the last part is El, God, Chei HaOlamim, the life force of the universe. All the words, all the names we have to try and describe something we cannot possibly describe. We now rise for the Kaddish, which is on page 224. that wordless, well, na is not a Hebrew word, it's just a sound. Those wordless melodies are called nigunim, and in Hasidic world they use this particularly effectively as a way of communal occasions, whether it's in shul or around the Shabbat table or whatever it was. People would be just humming these melodies or singing these melodies themselves. There's no words there, but it's incredibly useful in raising awareness of all sorts of things, and just raising your spirits a lot too. On the top of page 227, we're going to say the bracha. Remember, the bracha is a consciousness raiser, just making us more aware. And what we're going to be doing from here onwards is we're going to be reading the Shema. And the choir's going to sing it absolutely beautifully, as usual. But I think what's very important is that we focus on what we're saying the Shema for. Why is it that Shema is the most important meditation out of all of these, all the ones that we have? It's the only one that's said at least twice every single day. People say it in the morning, they say it in the evening, people say it before they go to bed. If possible, this will be the last words that you say before you pass away. Why is it so important? And I think that when we get deeper into what the Shema is about, we can see why it is so important that we focus on this intensely and really get the full meaning out of it. The bracha that we say before, which we'll read in Hebrew and then also in English, so we're sure we got it, is a bracha of this. Before we do all mitzvot, we usually say brachot. Whether you're shaking the lulav or you're lighting the Friday night candles, you say a bracha before them. Before you say the Shema, we say a bracha too. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al mitzvat kriyat Shema lahamlicho belevav shalem uliyachdo belev tov uleovdo b'nefesh chafetza. What that means is, praise to you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who hallows us with his mitzvot. We become more holy because we're doing things which are right, commanding us to recite the Shema. All well. Here's what it is. To declare wholeheartedly that you rule the world. To declare earnestly that you are one. What does it mean that God is one? The Kabbalistic understanding of God being one is when God and the Shekhinah, the presence of God in the world, is the same. Only way we can bring more of God's presence in the world, and says it very, very clearly, is by loving other people. When we act towards other people with love, we are unifying the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Holy One, and His Spirit in the world. Our job here is to earnestly declare this unity and to bring this into the world. And the last one is Lovdo b'nefesh chafetza, and to work for God. Just translate the Hebrew better, it's in the translation here. Lovdo, to work b'nefesh chafetza, with a real desire. And working for God is not only coming to shul, which is a very good idea, by the way. Not only coming to shul, but working for God is going to do your law practice in the morning. And when you're working on a piece of work for a client, you do that exceptionally well. Whatever it is you're doing, you do exceptionally well. That is working for God. Of course, if your job is housebreaking, that probably wouldn't be a good idea. But if your work is legitimate work, doing legitimate work as well as you possibly can, and treating co-workers as well as you can, and clients as well as you can, and employers as well as you can, that's doing God's work in the world. Let's turn now to page 228, and we recite the bracha over the creation of the world. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or v'rei choshech oseh shalom v'rei et hakol. We turn now to page 230, and we're about to say the Shema. The first, the preamble to saying the Shema, is in which we declare our love for God. Is first we remind ourselves that God loves us. Often people, and I came across this very recently in a text by Rabbi Nachman, and in the text he talks to one of his followers, and he says, you know what your problem is? He says, you don't believe in God enough. And his follower said, of course I believe in God. He says, if you believe in God, you know that God loves you. Believing God is accepting and believing that God really loves you. The reason why you're here and you're not dead, the reason why you're born and you're not an unborn soul, is because God loves you. And he says, you don't believe in God enough, because you don't believe that God actually really, really loves you. Let's say at the top of the page, please. Ahava rabav tanu Adonai Eloheinu, chemla gedola v'yetera chamalta aleinu, ba'avur avotenu shabbat chuvach, v'talmideim chokei chayim, kein tachayenu v'tlamdenu. The choir is now going to lead us through the Ha'erenenu.
והארנו בתורתך, ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך, ויחכה לבבנו לאהבה וליראה את שמך. והארנו בתורתך, ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך, ויחכה לבבנו לאהבה ולראה את שמך. לא נבוש, לא ניכלם, לא ניכשל, לעולם ועד. לא נבוש, לא ניכלם, לא ניכשל. והארנו בתורתך, ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך, ויחד לבבנו לאהבה וליראה את שמך.
At this point, if you're wearing a talit, you gather the tzitzit together. And it's if you're gathering the different parts of your life as well as bringing people together. It's a unifying activity. The last part of this talks about v'kerav tanu l'shimcha gadol sela b'amet. We bring all these things together in our belief in God, and it says, Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'amo Yisrael b'ahava. You have chosen your people Israel in love. There is, if you are very right-wing Orthodox, then you actually will probably believe that there's only one group of people on the whole world whom God really loves, the people of Israel. Which is interesting, that God creates a universe with 7.5 billion people and seems to favor about 11 million of them, and the others don't matter. The Hasidic masters have taught us that the word Israel means people who are on God's side. It's anybody who's on God's side. And it doesn't matter how you choose to be on God's side. What religions you choose to be on God's side is not relevant at all. Are you on God's side? Is your life lived as God would wish your life to be lived? Then you're in Israel. And Israel is a person nicely described by another Hasidic master. He says, Israel is somebody who's got their feet firmly on the ground and their head in heaven. Lots of Israels. It says, Habocher b'amo Yisrael b'ahava. You choose Israel's in love. We now turn to the Shema on page 232. Would you please stand? And for the first two lines, first sections of the Torah of the Shema, we close our eyes.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai
Let's read this together. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha v'chol nafshecha v'chol moedecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantan levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha v'lechtecha b'derech v'shochbecha uvkumecha ukashatam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha uchatavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha. There are actually three parts to the Shema. We're only going to be saying two. In this section, we only say two of them. It's just a custom. We go straight through to page 236. And when we say the word tzitzit, if you're wearing tzitzit, please just kiss your tzitzit at that time. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor, daber el bnei Israel v'amata lehem, v'asu lehem tzitzit, al kanfei bigdehem ledorotam, v'natnu al tzitzit, hakanaf petil techelet, v'haya lachem letzitzit, uritem oto, וזכרתם מקום מצוות אדוני ועשיתם אותם, לא תטורו אחרי לבבכם ואחרי עיניכם, אשר אתם זונים אחריהם, למען תזכרו ועשיתם מקום מצוותי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. אמת. If you look at on the left-hand page, please, 237, let's read that. Life without integrity is like loose hanging threads, easily fraying from the main cloth. While in acts of piety, we learn to understand that every instance is like a thread, raveling out of eternity to form a delicate tassel. We must not cast off the threads, but weave them into the design of an eternal fabric. Each day points to eternity. The fate of all time depends upon a single moment, now. The Hebrew word for emet, we end off by saying Adonai Elohechem emet. Emet is made up of three letters, Aleph, Mem, and Tav. The Aleph is the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Emet means truth. Emet means truth. The first letter of the Hebrew alphabet is Aleph. The middle letter of the Hebrew alphabet is the Mem. The last letter of the Hebrew alphabet is the Tav. Nothing is true unless it's true from beginning, through the middle, to the end. Good to know. Good to remind ourselves of. We now turn to Micha Mocha on page 240. And the choir are going to lead us through that. No, the choir are not going to lead us through it. Top of the page, please. Micha Mocha Ba'elim Adonai, Micha Mocha Ne'edar Ba'kodesh Norati Lot Sefele. שירה חדשה שבחו גאולים לשמחת שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. Rock of Israel, rise in support of Israel and redeem Judah and Israel as you promised. A Redeemer Adonai Tzvot is your name. Baruch atah Adonai Gal Yisrael. We're now about to say the Amidah. The Amidah is a central, it's a standing, Omed is to stand, Amidah is the standing meditation. We're going to say this all together on page 242. Before we begin, we orient ourselves with this. The Hebrew orientation is Adonai Sfatai Tiftach, Adonai my God, Sfatai Tiftach, open up my lips, Ufi Agid Tehilatecha, so I can be able to talk about how incredible this universe is that I live in. On page 243, let's read the English one over there. Where you see the word prayer, I'd like you to put in there meditation. Bottom of page 243. Meditation invites God's presence to suffuse our spirits, God's will to prevail in our lives. Meditation may not bring water to parched fields, nor mend a broken bridge, nor rebuild a ruined city, but meditation can water an arid soul, mend a broken heart, rebuild a weakened will. Please.
Adonai, Sefata Tiftachu Fiyah Giteilatecha. Adonai, Sefata Tiftachu Fiyah Giteilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu,
We'll read page 247 in English, please. You are the open door that beckons me in. Peeking around the door frame, I begin to enter into your glory. You move me forward, O Eternal, to step beyond self-made boundaries. Lift my foot over the threshold, that I might abide with you. In the house of the Eternal, I found my questions, waiting to be posed, and they filled me with wonder. Sit with me, eternal teacher. Encourage my seeking. As I fill my hours with your mitzvot, so shall I be filled. Send me through your door, stretching up to honor your name, sharing out this wonder, enriching myself in the giving. Baruch atah Adonai, hanotah b'tochenu, chei olam. Top of page 248. נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה, ואמר,
Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, Melchol haaretz kevodo.
אדיר אדירנו, אדוני אדוננו, מה אדיר שמך בכל הארץ.
Baruch kevod Adonai, Mimekomo.
אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו, הוא מלכנו, הוא מושענו, הוא ישמיענו ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהיך ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה.
לדור ודור נגיד גולך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, שבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש. Page 250.
Yam bam bam bam, Shabbat, Shabbat. Yam bam bam bam, Shabbat, Shabbat. Yam bam ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי שבת, שומרי שבת, לקורא ולגונן שבת. שומרי שבת, שומרי שבת, לקורא ולגונן שבת. שבת, 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 כולם ישמחו ויתענגו מטובך. שבת, שבת, ישמחו, ישמחו במלכותך, ישמחו, ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי שבת, שומרי שבת, לקורא ולגונן שבת. שומרי שבת, שומרי שבת, לקורא ולגונן שבת. שבת, שבת, כדת ימים אותו קראת, זכר למעשה בראשית, שבת, שבת. ישמחו, ישמחו במלכותך, ישמחו, ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי שבת, שומרי שבת, לקורא ולגונן שבת. שומרי שבת, שומרי שבת, לקורא ולגונן שבת.
More than the Jewish people has kept Shabbat, Shabbat has kept the Jewish people. Top of page 252. Eloheinu v'elahei avotenu, ritzei b'mnuchatenu, katshenu b'mitzvotecha, v'tein chalkenu b'toratecha, sabeinu mituvecha, v'samchenu b'yeshuatecha.
ותהה ליבנו, ותהה ליבנו, ותהה ליבנו, לכתך באמת. ותהה ליבנו, ותהה ליבנו, ותהה ליבנו, לכתך באמת. די, 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 הוי! די, 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 ותהה ליבנו, ותהה ליבנו, ותהה ליבנו, לכתך באמת. ותהה ליבנו, ותהה ליבנו, ותהה ליבנו, לעובדך באמת.
Page 253, the middle of the page. Let's read together. Where has this week vanished? Is it lost forever? Will I ever recover anything from it? The joy of life, the unexpected victory, the realized hope, the task accomplished? Will I ever be able to banish the memory of pain, the sting of defeat, the heaviness of boredom? On this day, let me keep for a while what must drift away. On this day, let me be free of the burdens that must return. On this day, Shabbat, abide. Help me to withdraw for a while from the flight of time. Contain the retreat of the hours and days from the grasp of frantic life. Let me learn how to pause, if only for this day. Let me find peace on this day. Let me enter into a quiet world this day. On this day, Shabbat, abide. Baruch atah Adonai, Makadesh HaShabbat.
Say Adonai Eloheinu le'am Yisrael, u'tfilatam be'ahava tekabel, u'tileh hatzon tamid avodat Yisrael. Amen.
57. Please read the refrain with me. I'll read the text and you read the refrain, Modim Anachnu Lach, which means we give thanks to you. For the expanding grandeur of creation, worlds known and unknown, galaxies beyond galaxies, filling us with awe and challenging our imaginations. Modim Anachnu Lach. For this fragile planet Earth, its times and tides, its sunsets and seasons. Modim Anachnu Lach. For the joy of human life, its wonders and surprises, its hopes and achievements. Modim Anachnu Lach. For human community, our common past and future hope, our oneness transcending all separations, our capacity to work for peace and justice in the midst of hostility and oppression. Modim Anachnu Lach. For high hopes and noble causes, for faith without fanaticism, for understanding of views not shared. Modim Anachnu Lach. For all who have labored and suffered for a fairer world, who have lived so that others might live in dignity and freedom. Modim Anachnu Lach. For human liberties and sacred rights, for opportunities to change and grow, to affirm and choose. Modim Anachnu Lach. We pray that we may live not by our fears, but by our hopes, not by our words, but by our deeds. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha lecha na'eh lehodot. Page 258. Sim shalom tova v'racha ba'olam. Chen v'chesed v'rachamim aleinu v'akol Yisrael amecha. B'cheinu avinu kulanu ki'achad b'or panecha. Ki b'or panecha natata lanu Adonai Eloheinu. Torat chayim b'avat chesed. Tzedakah v'racha v'rachamim v'chayim v'shalom. V'tov b'einecha. Levarech et amcha Yisrael. B'chol et b'chol shah b'shlomecha. Baruch atah Adonai hamorech et amo Yisrael. V'et kol yoshvei tevel b'shalom. We praise you, we bless you, Adonai our God, who brings peace to the people of Israel and all the people on earth. We now turn to page 260 for the concluding meditations. Please be seated. I would like to suggest that you look at one of the two meditations on page 261. There's one about quiet and there's one about strength. Have a look which one, choose one of those and read that to yourself.
She can find a cold Elohai. לשוני מרע, ושפתיים מדבר מדבר. ונמכר אליי נפשי תדור, ונפשי לעפר הכל תהיה אלוהי, אלוהי. יהיו לרצון אמרתי, והדיון ליבי לפניך, אדוני, אדוני צורי, אדוני צורי וגואלי.
Hebrew is a language that's got very, very few words. And ancient Hebrew's probably only got about 800 words. Modern languages have thousands. Hebrew, of course, has got many more now. And because of that, it opens itself, Hebrew texts open themselves to all sorts of lovely interpretations. You'll see over here, there's on the third line down under the Elohein Tzorah, it says, guard my tongue, my speech from evil, my lips from speaking deceitfully. Third line down says, open my heart to your Torah. Petach libi b'toratecha. A more accurate translation would be, open my heart with your Torah. It's not that we open our hearts to want the Torah more, but by doing Torah values, we become more open. Our hearts become more open. We're now going to invite the rabbi to give a sermon. Instead of a rabbi. We're going to be reading a very enigmatic piece in the Torah in a few moments. The portion is called Bechukotai in my teachings. What it's got there is they've got a set of blessings. There are 13 of them. The portion opens a set of blessings. If you listen to God and you behave well, you'll get these 13 blessings. Directly afterwards, it says there are some seriously hard consequences for transgression. This is the sort of passage that progressive Jews have always been very, very worried about. In fact, you'll notice we didn't say the second part of the Shema. It does appear in some parts of the Siddur, but in the progressive Siddur, pretty much it seems to have disappeared. That's the one where God says, if you do this, you'll get rain. If you do that, you'll get this. But if you don't, you'll get that. And this is a very odd one. Firstly, in this portion we're going to read today, where we actually see blessings and curses, the Ibn Ezra, one of the most famous commentators, and the first one to point this out, points out that there are fewer blessings than there are curses. There are 13 blessings and there are 30 curses. And there's some interesting stuff about this. The blessings are all at once. All the 13 blessings is if you behave nicely, you'll get all these blessings. If you don't, by the way, there's a hierarchy of things that are going to happen to you. First, not too bad, but then awful, and then leading up to absolutely awful. And it's almost like a wake-up call that there are severe reprisals for misbehavior. The problem with this is that motivation by reward and punishment is very juvenile. If those of you who've raised children know that, you tell your child when they don't understand why it's important that they finish all their vegetables and all the proteins on their plate, you say to them, if you do not eat your veggies and your meat, there is no jelly. That's it. Because the child is too young to understand that this stuff is actually good for her body, and she happens to like the taste of jelly and doesn't particularly like the taste of broccoli. But she has to eat it anyway. It's a very juvenile way of looking at things. We would hope that people would mature to a point where they appreciate values. They appreciate the value of good food, they appreciate the value of good nutrition, and that they can live their lives according to that. To say that you must, God says to you, if you do this stuff, you're getting a blessing, but if you don't, watch it. 30 curses will be upon you. We got to ask ourselves, how do we understand the Torah like this? And that's one of the reasons they took out the second portion of the Shema, because it sounds too juvenile. We're grown up. Additionally, there's nothing about spiritual rewards. The rewards here are you'll get a lot of food, you'll be full, life will be great, or of course your enemies will come and they'll sort you out. Very, very this worldly and very juvenile. The ethics of the fathers, the Pirkei Avot, has a strange verse in it which is totally contradictory to this whole style. It says, observe not as servants who serve your master for reward, but as servants who do your master's bidding because it's the right thing to do. And yet we have this stuff over here. And one asks, how can we possibly understand a Torah that says you will be cursed if you're naughty and you will be blessed if you're good? I'm going to suggest an alternative way of thinking about this. And I'd like to share with you an experience I had a couple of weeks back at Tiger Wheel and Tire. What had happened, it's not that I'm particularly interested in cars, but it's a nice way of understanding what this is all about. I noticed that there was a nick in my front right tire where on the wall of the tire, it seems like I must have hit something or gone too close to something, a bit of the rubber had been taken out. And I thought probably a good idea to go to Tiger Wheel and Tire. I know nothing about cars at all other than that, how to put it into drive and reverse. So I went to Tiger Wheel and Tire and I said to the fellow, I want to have a look at my tires. I think might have some trouble with them. He looked like a rabbi. He had a huge, large, very large red beard, but no yarmulke. And he walked the back of my car. He said, oh, this one's in trouble. And I said, no, it's not actually that one, it's the one in the front. He said, no, this one's in real trouble. And he walked, he said, well, this one's clearly in trouble because it's got a nick. Well, that one's in trouble as well, and so is this one. And he explained to me that what had happened was that I didn't know you're supposed to rotate tires. And I had a driver, I don't have a driver now, but when I had a driver, he would do whatever you're supposed to. I didn't do anything. And he also said that after a while, the rubber goes away and becomes more plasticky and sort of flakes a bit. He says, these tires are actually dangerous. And I didn't know that. And so thinking that I was coming in to change one tire that might be damaged or might not, I'll end up paying for 4 tires and realignment and balancing. And I thought of this as I was reading this piece over here. I don't believe that man with the red beard who looked rabbinic was there to punish me for having been wrong and misbehaved and refused to change his tires. It was not punitive at all. It was factual. If you don't treat your vehicle properly and appropriately and look after all the safety features, they will not work for you. That's not a punishment. That's a natural consequence of not looking after your vehicle properly. If you do look after your vehicle properly, don't worry, it will work nicely, and you will not be worried about the fact that your tires might pop on the highway. So we need to have a look at these 30 curses and 13 blessings very, very differently. We need to look at them as not, this is God punishing you, because God is not punishing us for doing things like they're going to describe, any more than the man with the big red beard was punishing me because I refused to look after my car properly. You look after it properly, it works well. You live your life well in this world, it works well. How do you do that? You just do the things that they're supposed to be. If a community refuses to look after the poor will come after them and take things from them that they have to have so they don't starve to death. If you abuse people, it will mess up your society. If you think you can grow your country by going and bombing other people's countries, ultimately this stuff doesn't work. These are natural consequences. And the reality, I think, of this portion that we're going to read now is that these are not God's punishments. We shouldn't think of them as being God cursing us. They're the realities of life. Why does the world work like this? Why didn't God, in his wisdom, make a world that works perfectly? So we're gloriously happy all the time. It doesn't work like that for a lot of other reasons. We're here to grow and develop as human beings, which is why we have challenges. And the challenges, if you meet them, will lead to great happiness. Great happiness. When you refuse to meet them, you will suffer. There will also be other areas in which you're suffering, but those sufferings that you have in the world are very much like riding your bike in the wind. They're there to make you stronger. Sometimes the wind is at your back, in which case you ride nicely and easily, and sometimes it's against you. But all of that is natural stuff, which is just very, very good for you. I think that when we start looking at the world, this parsha, and parashiyot like this, we have a completely different view of the world. And we mustn't see these things as punishment, as opposed to the natural reactions for not living in the way that we need to be living. There's also one more thing. There's a concept in Judaism called arevut, that all of us are responsible for everybody else. And you say, excuse me, I'm living my life well. I really am trying as hard as I can to be a decent human being. Why should I be punished because other people in the world are not decent? That's not a very intelligent question, using my automobile analogy. I get hurt when another driver goes through the traffic lights. I get hurt when he drives drunk. I too can hurt other people by being irresponsible in the way I drive. When we talk about everybody's responsible for everybody else, and we often get punished collectively, I really was trying to drive well. That guy didn't stop at the robot, went through, damaged my car and hurt me. That's the way the world works. Very much I think like the rules of motor cars. We're now going to take the Torah out, and we turn please to page. Yes, page 362, please. 362, and we'd like to ask Karen Bass and Lucy Frank to come and open the ark for us.
Ein kamocha v'Elohim Adonai.
Ein k'maasecha.
Malchutecha, malchut kol olamim, u'memsholtecha bechol dor v'dor.
Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed.
Adonai oz le'moiten, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom.
Harachamim eitiva b'tzorecha et Zion tibenei chomot Yerushalayim.
ויפוצו אהרון, ויאמר משה, קומה אדוני ויפוצו אויביך, ינוסו משנאיך מפניך.
כי מציון תצא תורה, כי מציון תצא תורה, ודבר אדוני מירושלים.
In the scrolls, the secret of our people's lives, from Sinai until now. Its teaching is love and justice, goodness and hope. Freedom is its gift to all who treasure it.
Baruch shenatan Torah, Baruch shenatan Torah, le'amo Yisrael, b'kdushato.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo.
Gadol Adonai iti, v'neromema shemo yachdav. Lecha Adonai הגדולה והגדולה והתפארת והנצח ועוד, כי כל בשמיים ובארץ לך אדוני הממלכה והמתנשא לכל בראש.
Please be seated. The Torah portion we're reading today comes from a Pasha Chukotai, and you can find it on page 871 in the Plat and 549 in the Hertz. We called for the first Aliyah, Raphael ben Eliyahu, Raymond Chatz.
Baruch hu et Adonai Barach,
Baruch Adonai Baruch
Adonai Barach Yavayet, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu haolam, asher b'chabaranu b'kol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et torato, Baruch atah Adonai notei Torah.
Amen. אם בחוקותיי תלכו ואם מצוותיי תשמרו, ועשיתם אותם, ונתתי גשמיכם בעיתם, ונתתי הארץ יבולה, עץ השדה ייתן פריו, והשיג לכם דאעש את בציר, ובציר ישיג את זרע, ואכלתם לחמכם לשבוע, וישבתם לבטח בארצכם, נתתי שלום בארץ, ונתתי שלום בארץ. ושכבכם ואין מחריד, ואין מחריד.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu et Torah temet, v'chayei olam nata b'tocheinu, Baruch atah Adonai Untitled Torah.
Amen.
Amen.
יעמוד יעקב בן אברהם ושרה, ג'ייקוב.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
Baruch Adonai Avraham Olam Ba'ed.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים ונתן לנו תורת אמת ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. אמן. ונתתי שלום בארץ, ונתתי שלום בארץ, ושבבתם ואין מחריד, והשביתי חיה רעה מן הארץ, וחרב לא יעבור בארצכם, ורדפתם את אויביכם ונפלו לפניכם לחרב. ורדפו מכם 500 מכם רבבה ירדפו, ונפלו אויביכם לפניכם לחרב. ופניתי אליכם והפניתי אתכם והרביתי אתכם והקימותי את בריתי איתכם.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נתת בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen.
For the third aliyah, I'm not going to call person, I'm going to call myself up. The reason for that is, since there's blessings, but after that comes curses, it's traditional not to call anybody up, to honor them by reading some curses with them. Just to read you where we're up to in the text, it says, if you follow my laws and are careful to keep my commandments, I will provide you with rain at the right time. So the land will bear its crops, and trees of the field will provide fruit. You will have so much that your threshing season will last until your grape harvest, and your grape harvest will last until you plant. You will have your fill of food, and you will live securely in the land. The second aliyah was, I will grant peace in the land so that you will sleep without fear. I will rid the land of dangerous animals, and the sword shall not pass through your land. You will chase away your enemies, they will fall before your sword. 5 of you will be able to chase away 100, and 100 will be able to defeat 10,000 as your enemies fall before your sword. I will turn to you, making you fertile and numerous, thus keeping my covenant with you. We're now going to read the third part, the third aliyah. I'm going to read that one. Baruch hu et Adonai hamborach. Baruch Adonai hamborach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
ואכלתם ישן נושן, וישן מפני חדש תוציאנו, ונתתי משכבי בתוכנו, ולא תגעל נפשי אתכם, והתהלכתי בתוכם, והייתי להם לאלוהים, ואתם תהיו לי לעם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות להם עבדים, ואשבור מוטות עליכם והולך אתכם קוממיות. ואם תשמעו לי ולא תעשו את כל המצוות האלה, אם בחוקותיי תמאסו ולא משפטי תגעל נפשכם, לבלתי לעשות את כל המצוות, להפרידם את בריתי, אף אני אעשה זאת לכם, והפקדתי עליכם בהבל את השחפת ואת הקדחת, מחלות עיניכם ומטובות נפשם, נפש וזרעתכם לריק, וזרעכם אכלהו אויביכם. נתתי פניי בכם, ונפחתם ונינפתם לפני אויביכם, ראו בכם שונאיכם, ונסתם ואין רודף אחריהם. The translation is, you will continue eating the previous year's crops, that's the good stuff, long after their time, and you will eventually have to clear out the old crops because of the new. I will keep my sanctuary in your midst and not grow tired of you. I will make my presence felt among you. Thus I will be a God to you, and will be a nation, and you will be a nation dedicated to me. I am God your Lord. I brought you out from the land of Egypt, where you were slaves. I broke the bands of your yoke and led you forth with heads held high. And these are the punishments, the beginning of them. But this is what will happen if you do not listen to me and do not keep all these commandments. If you come to denigrate my decrees and grow tired of my laws, then you will not keep my commandments and you will have broken my covenant. Then I will do the same with you. I will bring upon you feelings of anxiety along with depression and excitement, destroying your outlook and making life hopeless. And you will plant your crops in vain, because your enemies will eat it. I will direct my anger against you, and you will be defeated by your foes, and your enemies will dominate you, and you will flee. You will flee even when no one is chasing you. And if you still do not listen to me, I will increase the punishment for your sins sevenfold. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu torat emet, chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen.
And we now turn to the Misha Berach, the prayers for the community, and we call Karen Bass to read that for us, please. Sorry, the prayer for the country. I'm sorry? Who to Akbar first? Excuse me. Akbar.
Vezor Torah asher Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai beyad Moshe.
Yes, excuse me. You can do it now. Sorry, I've got my order. Skipped a couple of lines, so we can go back to Haftarah first and go call you up afterwards. My apologies. And we're going to have the Haftarah read by our very professional Haftarah reader, here on the capstick. And the Haftarah is Jeremiah chapter 16, verse 19 onwards. And it's found in Plaut on page 880 and in the Hertz on 551.
ברוך אתה, אדוני, אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנביאים טובים ורצה בדבריהם. הנאמרים באמת ברוך אתה, אדוני, הבוחר בתורה ובמשה עבדו ובישראל עמו ובנביאי האמת בצדק. Today's Haftarah is composed by Jeremiah, and I was interested to find out that in Hebrew, Jeremiah is Yiramehu, which is generally interpreted as meaning raised up by God. He was born just northeast of Jerusalem and died in Egypt sometime during the year 570 before the Common Era. And of course, he's known for his dire warnings, but also for the hope that he provided in his prophecies. Eternal One, my strength and my stronghold, my refuge in time of trouble, Nations from the ends of earth shall come to you and say, our ancestors inherited false gods, empty and utterly useless. How can human beings make gods? They are not gods at all. Therefore I am letting them know, once and for all, I will make them know my might and power, and they shall know that I am called the Eternal. Judah's sin is inscribed with an iron pen, engraved with a diamond point on the tablet of their hearts and the horns of their altars, to remind their children of their altars and sacred poles near leafy trees on the high hills. I will give your wealth, all your treasures, as spoil to a country bumpkin, the Hararite, because of the sin of your high places throughout your borders. You yourself will lose the heritage I gave you, and I will make you serve your enemies in a land you do not know. For you have kindled the flame of my wrath to burn a long time. Thus says the Eternal One, cursed are those who trust in mortals, making mortal flesh their strength, turning their hearts from the Eternal. They shall be like a stunted tree in the desert, never seeing when good comes, dwelling in dry places in the wilderness, in a salt land where no one dwells. Blessed are those who trust in the Eternal, whose trust is in the Eternal. They shall be like a tree planted near water, sinking its roots by a watercourse, never noticing when the heat comes, its leaves green, careless of times of drought, never failing to bear fruit. The human heart is of all things the most deceitful, so perverse. Who can understand it? I, the Eternal, search the heart and test the spirit, giving to all according to their ways, according to the fruit of their doings. Those who gain wealth by unjust means are like a partridge brooding eggs that do not hatch. In the middle of life it will forsake them. At the end they are known to be fools. A throne of glory exalted from the beginning is our holy shrine. O hope of Israel, Eternal One, those who forsake you shall be put to shame. Those who turn from you are written in the dust, for they have forsaken the fountain of living waters, the Eternal. Hear me, Eternal One, only then shall I be healed. Save me, only then shall I be saved, for you are my praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, tzur kol haolamim, tzadik b'chol hadorot, ha'el ha'ne'eman, ha'omer ve'oseh, ha'mdaber u'mkayem, shekol devarav emet v'tzedek. Al ha'torah, ve'al ha'avodah, ve'al ha'nvi'im, ve'al yom ha'shabbat hazeh, שנתת לנו, אדוני אלוהינו, לקדושה ולמנוחה, לכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל, אדוני אלוהינו, אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך, יתברך שמך בפי כל חי, תמיד לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה, אדוני, מקדש השבת.
Amen. And now it's appropriate to call out the people who are going to read the different prayers for the community.
Pray for our country. O guardian of life and liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Help us remember those who have lived in this land before us and those who have made it their home in more recent times. Teach us to give thanks for what we have by sharing it with those who are in need. Keep our eyes open to the wonders of creation and alert to the care of the earth. May we never be lazy in the work of peace. May we honor those who have died in defense of our ideals. Grant our leaders wisdom and forbearance. May they govern with justice and compassion. Help us to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve you. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife, and our country be sound in body and spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Pray for Israel, Rock of Israel. We pray for the state of Israel, for all who live in it and all who serve it. We pray that the journey to a just and lasting peace between Israelis and Palestinians, Jews, Christians and Muslims, and Israel and all her neighbors will be speedily resumed. God of Israel, we pray that we will soon see peace and prosperity in the corner of the land of our ancestors and in every corner of the Middle East. May the bonds of faith and fate, which unite the Jews of all lands, be a source of strength to Israel and to us all. God of all lands and all eternity, answer our constant prayer for peace and wisdom in the land of Israel, so that Zion will once again shine with a light to us and for the world. And let us say Amen.
Amen.
Before we conclude, we'll just say the prayer for healing for those people who need this right now. Mi sheberach avotenu ve'imotenu Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, v'Leah, hu yivarech et hacholim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu yimalei rachamim aleihem, lahachalitmam, laharufotam, lahachazikam, v'yishlach lehem mehera refuah shlema min hashamayim, refuat hanefesh, refuat haguf, hashta bagala, v'zman kariv, v'nomar Amen. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah, bless those who are ill. May the Holy One blessed be He, filled with compassion for their health, to be restored, and the strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit. And let us say Amen.
Amen.
And today we think of David Wolf, Dorian Myers, mother of Matthew Myers, Gabrielle Waxman, Giddy Leaf, Irma Bremen, aunt of Giddy Leaf, Jackie Meltz, Laura Cohen, Lisa Carnwoods, Maureen Cohen from Beth David in Durban, Rodney Bergman, nephew of Lee and Lola Groveman, Ron and Michelle Kipling, Sandy Paul in the UK, Steve Margot, Johnny Joffe, and father of Justin Joffe, and Phyllis Seligman, and anyone else who requires healing right now. We now turn to the putting away of the Torah, and we're on page 374. And if the ark openers and closers could come up, please. Hallelujah, Shema Adonai, Kinizkav Shmuel Avadol. Lekach tov natati lachem, Torati al ta'azovu. So beautiful. The introduction of musical instruments is not new at all. It goes back to the temple. In the temple, they always had musical instruments. And when we have these beautiful sounds that are coming out of our choir, our musicians here, it really is a great enhancement to what we do. We now turn to page 586 for the Aleinu. Before we begin Aleinu, it's worthwhile looking at the text as we're going through this. It's an extraordinarily spiritual meditation, and it's worthwhile looking at the meaning behind it, and you can see why it is so important that we stand when we say Aleinu.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו גדולי הארצות, ולא שמענו כמשפחות
Let the time not be distant, O God, when all shall turn to you in love, when corruption and evil shall give way to integrity and goodness, when superstition shall no longer enslave our minds, nor idolatry of thin ideas and cheap pleasures blind our eyes. May all created in your image become one in spirit, one in friendship, forever united in your service. Then shall your realm be established on earth, and the word of your prophet fulfilled. The eternal will reign forever and ever. Turn to the memorial section where we remember people who have passed away at this time. We're going to start with the reading on page 592. There are many readings. I particularly like this one. When I die, give what's left of me away to children and to old men that wait to die. And if you need to cry, cry for your brother walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give to me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known or loved. And if you cannot give me away, at least let me live on. Let me live on your eye. Let me live on your eyes and not on your mind. You can love me most by letting hands touch hands, letting bodies touch bodies, by letting go of children that need to be free. Love doesn't die, people do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. Today we remember Junior Judah Tokachale is the brother of Jacob Tokachale from our synagogue. We remember Ruth Speyer, mother of Doris Rothenberg, Stuart McCall, husband of Diane McCall, David Bancroft, father of Jack Bancroft, Ray Bella Ross, mother of Michael Ross and grandmother of Warren Ross, Bernard Duchen, past chairman of Bet David, and Livian Fenster Fluxman, friend of Gail Saul. From Beit Menorah in Pretoria, we remember Anne Hirschman, mother of Merle Cobb, and Lina Bloom, mother of Alison Taylor. From Beit David in Durban, John Olsbrook, husband of Elka Olsbrook, Renee Friedman, mother of Eitan Friedman, Stella Levy, mother of Leslie Wilson, Brenda Greenberg, sister of Glenn Brazil, Gerard Goetves, father of Alexandra Cohen, Mark Grundy, son of Stan Miller, Leo Berman, father of Maureen Cohen, Basil Israels, husband of Shirley Israels, passed away recently, Leon Capon, partner of Karen Bass and mourned by his daughters, Gila and Kelsey, and sisters Linda and Joy. Avril Townsend, cousin of Pat Farrell, and from Beit Luria, Greg Margolis, mourned by his wife, Rabbi Julia Margolis, children Emily and Victoria, and Margolis and Rubenstein families. Let's recite Kaddish together, and if you know somebody who hasn't got anyone to say Kaddish for them, please keep them in your thoughts at this time. Kaddish is found on page 598. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah, v'omad yivrach Yerutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah m'vorach l'olam u'lomei omaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitmaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dikudsha brichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata Shushpachata v'nechamata, Gamiran v'olma, v'imru amen. Yeh shlamar rabba mishmaya, v'chaim aleinu v'akol Yisrael, v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mamav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'akol Yisrael, v'akol yoshvei tevel, v'imru amen. You can be seated now. The addition at the end, you'll see in your Sidurim, it just says, makes peace for all Israel. The bit that I add in this is, and all people on earth, we need it badly right now. So that's, I'll call Yoshvei Tevel, all those people who are dwelling on earth. We now turn to...
Do you want to do announcements?
Oh yes, we must have announcements. Okay. We want to thank you all for joining us here in the synagogue particularly, and all those who joined us online. We're appealing to people to become more involved in synagogue life, and there are many ways you can do this. Obviously, the first and foremost way is to join us here in the synagogue. We can all come back now, and we can be together. There's also lots of tasks people can volunteer for in the synagogue, and we'll communicate all those things to you presently. There's a final call to register for biennial conference of South African Union of Progressive Jews, which takes place on this coming weekend, and will be held in Beit Menorah in Pretoria. This will be attended by leaders and congregants from around South Africa, and we are honored to have Rabbi Sergio Bergman. He's the president of the World Union of Progressive Jews as a keynote speaker. You can follow this on Zoom. There's an option to join discussions via the Zoom. There's a nominal fee of 200 Rand. The initial program was emailed to members on Thursday, and it's in our weekly bulletin. And the details and links you'll be able to find on the account. Reminder to continue bringing donations of peanut butter and jam and juices and tin goods to the synagogue. All these donations assist the sisterhood to do the wonderful work that they do and feed young children, Alex, where in most cases may only be their only meal. So we really need to help those people very, very desperately right now. Please join us in the service after this, in the foyer after the services for bracha that was sponsored by Karen Bass in honor of the late Leon Capron, who passed away recently. Leon would have celebrated his 70th birthday on the 24th of May, and our heartfelt condolences to Leon's family. We conclude the services by singing Adon Olam on page 625.
Adon Olam Hashem Ala,
please join us outside in the foyer.
Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat shalom, Shalom, Shabbat shalom, Shalom u'mvorach, Shabbat shalom, Shalom u'mvorach, Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shalom.